Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Council meeting on August 8th, 2023. We are now live on YouTube. And for the benefit of folks at home, I'll do a roll call of council. I'm Mayor Shantz and present and chairing this meeting. Councillor Bryant.
Present.
Councillor Burgess.
Present.
Councillor Cadeau.
Present.
Councillor Grant. Present. And Councillor Schwinn.
Present.
Thank you. We need a motion that council reconvenes in open session. Moved by Councillor Bryant, seconded by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. I'll start by acknowledging the land on which we live has been here from time immemorial, and that Indigenous people have lived here also from time immemorial. I thank the Shinaton, also called Yadawandaram, the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people who have lived here and cared for this land and who continue to share and steward this land with us. May we together learn to care for each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. Please join me in a moment of silence to start. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest?
I think I want 10.2. The line work done from that.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? There are no items to come forward from closed session. We do have minutes from the council meeting of June 27th and committee of the whole of August 1st. Moved by Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. No public meetings and no presentations, but we do have a number of delegations. And before we hear from the delegates, I need to read a little blurb here. You have a maximum of 7 minutes to speak to council unless council or the clerk has set a different time. Our screen timer is not working, so our clerk will be our timer and will let you know when you've got a minute and when your time is up. Once you're finished, please wait for questions of clarification from council. When there are no more questions for you, please return to your seat or turn your video off if you're online and your microphone off. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the discussion and or meeting if you'd like to. You're also welcome to leave whenever you wish. Council discussion and debate will start when all questions of clarification have finished. So our first delegation this evening is informational delegation regarding site alteration permit for 1071 Zuber Road. And I'll call on Aaron Bowman, Community Liaison for the Old Order Conference. Welcome, Mr. Bowman.
Well, thank you for having us out tonight. I believe you've received the memo that we had submitted. And of course it is, as mentioned, refill project at 1071 for Paul and Elaine Martin. This refill was in progress a number of years ago, and for reasons somewhat unclear, but it was paused, and we're back with the objective of continuing. That is, as mentioned in the memo, it is not exactly a compliment to our beautiful landscape in Woolwich Township. I think there's some room for improvement there. And of course, the Martins are looking for some more arable land that currently is not available to them in the 20 or 30 acres in question. So the way I understand, ultimately council is instrumental in issuing the permit. And to that end, we like to engage you. I think we need more players on our team to make this happen, which is council. And I did reach out to Councillor Grant, and again, because the entire council is part of making this thing happen, or issuing the permit anyways, she suggested we present to the entire council. So we've done some legwork on this. MOE requirements are being met or exceeded. 406/19 is being met or exceeded. So, there's a few more things in progress to be, and I think we have someone here, Mr. Baker, who can speak to questions related to that or other issues surrounding that. I think at the end of the day, I won't make this presentation very long because I think the topic is not entirely new to us. Bygones are bygones, and I'd like to leave them there. We've got 3 parties interested in making this thing happen. We met with Lori Fox and had numerous phone conversations with her, and she's certainly been conveying some of council's ambitions to also see this thing come to fruition. We've got the markets like they would like to tidy up that field, make it useful. Staff and council also would like to see that piece of land returned to farmland, I'm sure. And of course, we have Mr. Feger looking for beneficial reuse of excess soils. I don't think I'll spend too much more time on the memo. This, of course, the aggregate that was extracted from the site has been used in Woolwich Township, which is ideal, local. And so again, we're going back to use for a hand in making this thing a return to farmland, which it was prior to the the extraction of the aggregate there. I think I'll leave it at that. It's always easier working off questions than just me ranting on.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there questions for Mr. Bowman?
I have a,
Councillor Grant.
I wanted to say thank you very much for coming out and presenting some information to us and just giving us an opportunity to ask any questions. I think I have questions that are more related from the staff side of things, specifically around the grading of the road off of line 86. So I don't know if we want to wait for that or.
Let's.
Yeah.
Does anyone have questions specifically for Mr. Bowman? No. Okay. Thank you very much for coming in. And I think Councillor Grant has some questions for staff that we'll deal with now. So
Thank you.
thank you.
I guess I'll just keep going. So my question is just when it comes to the regrading of the road, what would be the frequency of us assessing the condition of the road? As well as if we're finding that there may need to be more frequency or less frequency, there would be space to adjust that. I just noticed in the memo here that this would be at the cost of the applicant. I'm just wondering if there's any kind of cap on that amount, or if we have more than 3 recommended a year, just because of the condition of the road. I guess this is very fuddled question, but I'll work my way through it.
Mr. Pay or Ms. Fox, who wants to take that? Laura, go ahead.
Thank you, through Mayor and Councillor. Yes, the protection of the road is part of this project. Obviously, there's a large section of the road that we used for the haul route, and that is all included in the agreement that we're working on with the applicant right now. Part of that agreement involves us receiving security for the length of the project to make sure that the road, any damage to the road that's caused specifically by the project is covered off and paid for by them. But in the meantime, we have been in discussions with the applicants about what sort of frequency the grading would need to be done, and who would actually do that grading, whether it be our staff or even an outside consultant. And those questions are still to be finalized in the agreement that will be coming before council at a later time when it's ready to be presented.
Thank you. And I guess I can't recall how long is that section of road, and just a rough idea maybe of how much it would cost to regrade that section of road, just so we have an idea.
I'm sorry, Councillor, I didn't know that the answer to the length of that road. I don't have it with me, but I can definitely get it
Okay.
for you. Jared can maybe speak to the normal timeframe that it takes to grade a section of road like that. I have some experience in my past with that, and I would say half a day would be fair to say that it would take, or it wouldn't be, I don't think it would be more than that.
Yeah, through your chance to Councillor Grant, I think it's very similar to what we looked at with Reed's with council. That would give a sense for magnitude for dollars and time. I think what we've come up against recently was conveyed with some of the regional projects. We're getting a lot of traffic that we wouldn't normally see on a lot of side gravel roads. It's caused a lot of grief and aggravation. One of the things that would have to happen if it remained gravel is you'd have to close the road to properly do it. You can't have it with live traffic and try to grade a road property when it's been damaged like that. So I think that's part of the challenge. The other part of the challenge here for us that we're still working through is I think that a gravel road is not meant to sustain this kind of traffic. Case in point will be a report later this evening just about Jigs Hollow Road and that haul road being improved to sustain, you know, substantial truck traffic on a gravel road. So gravel roads aren't meant to do that. That's another challenge that we're also working through too. So it's a bit of a tough question to answer. But I think Reed's would give us a snapshot for dollars, time for a pass like that. But I think there's more factors involved in something of this magnitude with this kind of truck traffic on it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, thank you. Lori, when is that report coming approximately?
So Madam Mayor, it would be, I'm expecting it to come in the early fall or maybe early September was what we were thinking. We're working through the agreement and they just actually today provided a new film management plan to us to review. So once all of that stuff is reviewed, it should be early fall, I would say.
Okay, and would all parties get a notice of that report coming, or how does that communication happen?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, thank you for bringing this all together for us, and we can expect a report in September or October, and then we'll deal with the staff and the staff report at that time. Thank you. Okay. 1.2 is a request from the Bridgeport Rod and Gun Club for reduced site alteration fees to create sound berms. And we have Thurman Penny, president of the Bridgeport Rod and Gun Club, and Jesse Sandbrook of JJ's Contracting. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good evening. What we're proposing is to increase our existing berms for a rifle range. 100 yard. And our pistol range. Now, we are currently well above federal regulations, but what we're trying to do, our backstop on the 100 is 8 meters. And we would like to take the whole thing up to 8 meters, which would really help the sound barrier for the neighbors. And put a stockpile behind the pistol range for future use. Because every year we get channeling when you're shooting into the backstop. Every year we have to fill that in and pack it in. And we're proposing berm number 4 along the northwest corner down to this wetland to help out our immediate neighbors to the northwest, which are both elderly, they're 80 and 78. And then 2 doors down is an 83-year-old.
Are there questions? Councillor Cahill.
Thanks through you, Mayor, to the delegates. Do you know approximately how much fill you're hoping to bring in to complete these 4 berms?
So as of right now, just doing berms 1, 2, and 3, we're probably gonna be in around 2,000 loads. If we go do berm 4 and finish doing berms around the whole property, it wouldn't be more than probably 8,000 to 10,000 loads at the absolute maximum.
And so that 4th, sorry, just to follow up, that 4th berm is gonna be taking quite a substantial amount.
It'll be quite a bit. It'd probably be, I haven't done the exact math on it, I haven't had a chance to get down there, but it'd be around 2,000 loads roughly.
Have, you've obviously done the math and based on the current tipping fee, do you think it's cost prohibitive to move forward with all 4 of your proposals? Should we make a decision not to adjust?
We'd like to lower the tipping fee just because we're using the material to benefit the community anyways. Like I understand that you guys have had some issues with prior bill guys. I've never personally dumped in Woolwich Township before. I'd like to start a clean slate and not be associated with that. I know I have to in a sense, but I'd like to have a good start.
Yeah, with the problem gun itself. Dropped, fill in to twice now to increase the berms compared to bring it up to CFO standards. And, there was no tipping fee at the time.
Through you, Mayor, Council Delegate. Are you creating these builds due to requests from the neighbors, or are you being proactive on the sound barrier?
We're being proactive.
Bonnie, Councillor Brian.
Thank you. Through you to the delegates. How many days a week are you allowed to offer shooting at the range per the bylaws?
You know, how many days a week are you allowed to shoot the range for bylaws?
Every day. You're allowed to shoot.
So there's not restrictions on when you can shoot, like you're not limited to say Tuesdays and Thursdays type of thing? I thought there was restrictions on the number of days that you could run.
At the times of day, there's restrictions on.
Times, sorry, I'm having a difficulty hearing you. There's restrictions on the times you're allowed to shoot through the day?
Yes.
And what would those time frames be?
Oh, I don't have that right with me.
Okay. Are you getting any complaints from the village, or is it just being totally reactive?
Yes, no, we have no complaints.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? So your request is for your request is for a reduction in the fees?
Yes.
And are we looking for a staff report to come back from that or on this? Ms. Fox, can you speak to that?
Mayor, we don't really need to do a staff report if we decided today, let's say on a reduced fee. We certainly could do that for you if that is helpful. But if you decided on any kind of a reduction in fee, then what we would do, just apply that to that permit application that came in.
Councillor Cahill.
Thanks through you, Mayor. What's the timeline for what you're hoping to move forward with some of this work?
We're probably gonna try to start September and be hopefully done into December.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Ms. Freeze.
Sorry, just to be clear to council, not all site alteration permits come to council. So there's only specific ones that are beyond a typical scope that would come to council, otherwise they can be approved by the director as per the bylaw. So as Lauren had mentioned, this one is just about the charge that we're discussing, not the permit or approval of the permit.
Okay, and can you remind us what the fees are?
Sure, the mayor, the fee currently is, for a large scale, fill permit, the application fee is $2,700 plus $2 per cubic meter of imported fill.
Three Mayor Sean's, just to do the math on that, what kind of fees are we looking for based on what they're bringing in?
The counselor, for the, what was your total, sorry?
I'd say 8,000 loads by the time we're said that.
So 8,000 loads is about 80,000 cubic meters times two, that's $160,000, right? So as, you know, the bylaw wasn't written, believing that, it would apply to such large volumes of fill. It was more, written to deal with smaller fill projects.
I'll just, do we have any more questions? Yes, you do. Okay, go ahead.
Three Mayor Sean's, okay. Just, sorry, for clarification on the dollar amount, where would the money be coming from for that? Like, would that be raised through the Rod and Gun Club to fund all that then? Just through,
No, it'll be coming directly from the bill.
okay,
Yeah, like the bill side of that, yeah.
Are there any other questions for the delegation? No? Okay, thank you. We'll discuss it a little more here and if you want to sit down until we're finished and then you'll know where we land.
For sure, thank you.
So do you have any suggestions or recommendations on where we go with this or?
Maria, I can make a recommendation, based on the volume of fill, coming in and, their timelines for the fill. This is as the gentleman stated, this is a 4-month project. It's not a multi-year project. So that's why, you know, staff could certainly issue that permit. If we look at what we, considered in the past for large scale fill sites, we're looking more at a graduated, fee schedule for it. And that just, it reduces it down to an amount that is a little more reasonable for applicants with large volumes of fill coming in. So we talk about those on an average cubic meter. It starts out at our $2 range and then it reduces depending on how much fill they bring in. So in the case of this one, to sort of be in line with what we discussed in the past, council, it would be, I think $1 per cubic meter would be a reasonable fee. That would be an average. Again, it would start out at that original $2, which is what the original bylaw indicated, and then it would reduce from there.
Councilor Cadeau.
I would tend to support something like that. What I would really support is crystallizing this in policy, though. If we have certain levels that are, you know, are going to be cost prohibitive for them, how can we, you know, not come to council to discuss those individually, right? So yeah, I would definitely support, you know, what has been put on the table. I'm interested in other feedback though.
Councilor Grant.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I would support the use of the graduated fee schedule for this, as Ms. Fox said, that the way the policy is currently written, it hasn't really taken into account for these projects. And I think, again, it's in the interest of neighboring community members to have like a sound barrier placed there. So I would also support that graduated fee.
Okay, can we?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Lori, could you perhaps advise council what the fee would have normally been under the bylaw and under the graduated fee, what that would mean for the rod and gun?
Sure, absolutely. To the mayor and if the fee schedule, as I said, is $2 per cubic meter, so that their total fee for their 80,000 cubic meters would be $160,000. So this would result in half their total fee they would pay for that would be half of that. So the $80,000, they would still pay that $2,700 application fee. That's a fee for staff to process the application and, get things going. And then, they would pay the per cubic meter. It's graduated and it's also graduated on when we collect it as well. So we collect it at different stages of the import process.
I think we've got a kind of consensus here. I wonder if, staff could put a suggested motion for us to help us out with wording.
On the screen, it's just fun.
There we go.
Spelling mistakes there, but that was just a quick typing.
If someone on council would like to move that, if you're
Could-
happy with it, Councillor Kendall.
Could we add a portion and direct staff to consider the bylaw and how it can be updated? Sorry, that was not very well spoken.
Jeff
Jeff is
will
gonna
fix
work with
it.
magic. I see him up there smiling.
I believe that is coming. The whispers behind me.
Yeah, I
Gonna be-
think we talked about it, a couple months ago, maybe now, and,
Yeah, for you, Madam Mayor. Yes, council, we do have it planned. It's coming in the next few months. Lori's already started working on it. It will include some more information on graduate fees where we think they are appropriate, as well as updating a number of other areas in the site alteration bylaw. So we already have it in the works. It should probably be to council by end of September.
Perfect.
and what we're doing here is in line with what you're planning to bring forward. And what we did then. Did you move that? Moved by Councillor Gazzo, second by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We get Councillor back. Okay, thanks. Our next delegation is to request to get in Saranac Avenue in Bloomingdale. And online we have Audrey O'Hearn and Mark Cobser. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor Shantz and council members, thank you for allowing us to take part in the democratic process. We are the owner's fee and simple of the property located at 8 Saranac Avenue in Bloomingdale, and we'd like to share our experience over the past 13 plus years. Through Freedom of Information requests, we have seen that there have been allegations that we are suing the township. This is simply not true. We have provided numerous solutions over the years to try to stop the expensive damages to our property. Up to February of 2019, we were relying on the advice of a family member whose specialty is real estate law. In 2019, we hired a lawyer to do a title search after the township CAO insisted on legal proof to back up our claim that there was no easement. In the updated information that we shared with you all earlier, we included photos of the expansion of the pavement over the years, as well as a hammerhead design using truck turning software that we provided to staff, and video evidence of township plows treating Saranac Avenue as a dead end as late as this past winter. In 2016, our neighbor applied to add 1.7 hectares to the settlement boundaries to allow development of their land to our east, which according to the language that staff are relying upon, would have returned our property to us. This was rejected by council in 2017 on staff's recommendation, effectively giving the township an encroachment in perpetuity. In the past, the region's waste collection vehicles and the township's plows regularly use the turning circle that traverses our private property to collect waste and to clear the road for the two houses opposite ours. We do not access services at all on Saranac Avenue, only on Greenwood Road. Yet our property bears the sole burden of a turning circle that benefits the property owners opposite us. The township has ample road allowance on the opposite side, but refuses to use it because, according to staff and the township's legal counsel, they do not want a disagreement with another neighbor. On Monday, May 2nd, 2011, in an attempt to work with the township staff to mitigate the damage to the inside of the turning radius where the damage has always occurred, we offered to allow the township to pave a bit more to the inside turning radius. Not receiving a response, we followed up in August of 2011. Damage continued to occur to the inside radius of the circle despite the extension of pavement. As our repair costs mounted, we complained to the region, who agreed that their waste collection vehicles would back out of Saranac instead of going through our private property. The Township of Woolwich staff backed the snow plow out of Saranac Ave instead of using the circle and contracted a local farmer to blow the snow out around the turning circle for a few years. The township approached the region in December of 2017, asking if they would have any objections to dead-ending Saranac Avenue. The region did not object since they were already having waste collection vehicles back out and were treating the road as a dead end anyway, as was the township at that time. 5 months later, after two township staff were on our property and told us that they were just going to pave over the bulb without our consent, we had another meeting with the mayor and the CAO. Once again, we offered solutions and made suggestions on how to mitigate damage to our property while servicing the two properties opposite us. Those suggestions were rejected in August of 2018, and we were asked to provide a legal opinion on our assertion that the Township of Woolwich did not have an easement. At this time, we were informed by both the CAO and the acting manager of engineering that road resurfacing was to take place in September of 2018, and that no extra paving over what currently existed at that time would occur. We arrived home from work on September 11th, 2018 to find that the township staff had dug up sod and other landscaping materials, thrown them into the back of a township vehicle, and paved over 10 feet on the inside and outside radius of the circle, only on our side. Our surveillance cameras recorded these activities with audio. We eventually were able to hire a lawyer whose specialty is municipal law. A thorough title search of our property revealed that no easement has ever existed on our property, and the Township of Woolwich has never registered an instrument or paid for an easement. Our lawyer wrote the Director of Land Titles to have any language regarding the non-existent easement removed. Even if an easement existed, it would have expired in 2006 with the amendments to the Registry Act, which state that easements are only valid for 40 years from the date of registration of the instrument that created the easement, which, had there been an easement created in the prescribed form, would have been in 1966 when approval was granted for the original subdivision plan, which also does not show a registered easement. The township staff reliance on a transfer of deed in 1987 has no legal effect, since it was necessary to register notice in the prescribed form. Simply referencing an easement in a separate transfer document is not the prescribed form. There never was a transfer of easement directly from a prior owner of our property to the township. Direct transfers are required in order to create a formal easement interest. For years, the township staff hired a local farmer to blow the snow from the entire turning circle. This year, a different private contractor was hired to clear the circle on our property. We had no notice of this, and the Township of Woolwich plows continued to back the plows out of the street instead of going around the turning circle. This changed after we lodged a complaint with the Office of the Ontario Ombudsman, and the township were contacted by the Ombuds. The next snowfall after the Ombudsman's call to the township, the plows drove around our side of the property, destroying trees and delineators that we had put in the landscape area to protect our property. In February of this year, the new private contractor was reported stepping out of their vehicles and breaking trees and hurling delineators at us in our home. Regarding the proposal put forward by township staff, we were told that we would have a proposal early in the year of 2021. 7 months and many requests later, in July of 2021, we received a file of the existing conditions and not the CAD file of the proposal as promised in December of 2020. From July 2021 to September 2022, several requests were made through our legal counsel to provide answers to our questions and to provide a CAD file of the proposal and more detailed information on what was being proposed to allow us to calculate areas of pavement expansion and removals. The same PDF file of existing conditions with no details was sent to us in response. The borders of the buffer strip were not represented and needed to be for us to make an informed decision. In mid-September of 2022, nearly 2 years after the initial on-site meeting, we finally received the CAD file, but our questions on the buffer strip went unanswered. We are still waiting on a response to the major question of a 1 meter buffer strip and the proposed new property borders. Requests have gone unanswered, save for the threat of expropriation of even more of our property in response to our request to have questions from over 2 years answered. We see no point in meeting to discuss plans that we have never been provided, and from what we've been told are still not completed. We have worked hard to transform our property into a woodlot because we believe in limiting our carbon footprint, and to have the township staff simply cut down all of our work and pave it over for the convenience of turning a plow around a few times a year when the township plows already back out of numerous dead-end streets in the township with many more houses and have backed out of Saranac Avenue successfully for many winters seems a travesty. We are asking council to direct staff to remove the subject to language untitled because, as the director of land titles has stated, there is no easement and therefore the subject to reference has no legal bearing or effect. We also ask that council direct staff to dead end Saranac Avenue in Bloomingdale and for the township of Woolwich to return our property to us as there is no easement in effect, presently or historically. We're asking the township of Woolwich to treat Saranac Avenue the way that the region of Waterloo has been for years as a dead end, and how the township planned to treat it cost effectively in 2017. Should township staff continue to recommend councils reject the suggestion from the 2017, I have one paragraph to finish if that's okay.
Okay.
Should township staff continue to recommend council reject the suggestion from 2017 to dead end the street, we ask that future consideration for the turning circles reconfiguration be equitably divided between our property and the adjacent property at 5 Saranac Avenue, as should be done when turning circles are created. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I do expect a report later this year from staff on this issue. I think we all agree that it has gone on for a fair period of time, and we should work to come to some kind of a resolution. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Cook, sir? No, I'm not seeing any questions. So thank you for your presentation. We'll look for that report coming to open session later this year, and you'll certainly get a copy of that report and notice of when that's coming, so that you can present again if you wish, based on the information that staff bring forward. Thank you. The next delegation is a request for relocation of park fence in Breslau, and we'll call on Mr. Obena Amidi. Mr. Amidi, you can turn your camera on. Welcome.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Shons and members of council. My name is Obina Amadi. I am a resident of 314 Dolman Street in Breslau. Apparently, I bought the property and my house was adjacent to the playground, which I thought would be perfect for my kids. But I found out to my amazement that the fence for the park was going to be about 2 feet to my exterior wall. And I find this not very suitable for obvious reasons. It's so close to the wall that there'll be maintenance issues. I will not be able to maintain that portion of the property. 2 feet is not enough space for me to be able to mow the lawn in that spot. This summer, this is one of the creatures that I killed while maintaining that portion. So there's going to be a safety issue for my family members. and also for park goers. I'm sure the city or the township will not want that kind of issue. And thirdly, I have participated in helping the affordable housing crisis by spending a lot of money to get a basement in my house to accommodate people. To take a look at the flow of things, it would be best for me to have my fence on that side that is close to the park fence. So in other words, I'm asking that the township can direct staff to kind of move the fence about 1 or 2 feet from me. I'm not asking to buy land. I just want them to move it. It's not going to impact the playground. It's not going to impact anything, but then it will afford me the opportunity to be able to maintain that place, have a walkway to service the affordable housing that I've graciously helped the township to build. There's a lot of money that has gone into this stuff, and I would really appreciate the support from the township as partners in progress and partners in alleviating the problem of affordable housing in Ontario. One, because of the flow of traffic, and because it will be very expensive for me to go and make that foot traffic to be coming from the other side of the property. Also, when you look at other houses in our subdivision, like on Tilbury, every property has 4 feet from their property line. Every fence is 4 feet from each property line. But I discovered that on my street, it's a different story. So I'm simply asking that staff be directed to move the fence just 1 or 2 feet from where it is currently designated, so that we can mitigate all of these issues that I have highlighted. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, any questions? Councillor Schwinn.
Question for staff, 1 hour later.
Let's do questions for the delegation, and then we'll go to questions of staff. Are there any questions for Mr. Amidi? No. Okay, thank you for your delegation, and we'll take a minute to ask staff some questions and then decide where we're going to go with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Schwinn.
Yeah, just that's wondering what the required setback is from the house to the lot line and our subdivisions, and what it actually is in the property.
Ms. Bruce?
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. It does vary in different locations. There are reduced setbacks in certain subdivisions. It would also have to depend on what the building code requirements are. So if there's a lower setback, or if there's less setback, then there wouldn't be allowed to be any windows on that side of the house. I can't verify exactly what it is in this subdivision, and what he has in his side yard. However, the fence that is along the property line is already a few inches along the township property. We always do that, so it's not directly on the property line.
Other questions? Councillor Cano.
Thanks to you, to Director Priest. Would it be possible to move it a foot potentially? What would the ramifications of that be?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think it would set a precedent for future developments. Anyone that was beside a park space, they may also request the same accommodation. It would still be a township property. He's not requesting ownership here, just the fence being moved. So there wouldn't be an opportunity for him to put any kind of walkway or anything, or any kind of structure on that piece of property that was under the township ownership. We can move the fence. There is a cost to it, but it's not recommended by staff, but it's up to council. I'm not sure if if Thomas had anything else to add along the side of the parkland and the impact on that parkland property.
Yeah, through restaurants, not so much, just the fact that the fence is already in place too, so as Director Freeze has mentioned, there'd be a cost that would need to be borne to know that.
Anyone else? Councillor Schwinn?
I guess for along that line, how big is the park, and if we sold a 1 foot or 2 foot strip, would that impact the park at all?
So I can start with that. Thomas is looking up the size of the park, I think, but I can start with that. So there are specific calculations with any subdivision of how much parkland we need. So we do accommodate those accommodations. I think the bigger issue is if you're looking at an opportunity for him to purchase that land. Again, it does set a precedent for anybody else that's backing onto it or siding onto parkland, and then also having that same opportunity to buy a few feet of parkland from the township. It's not something that we would like to entertain. I don't know what else I can really say to that. Thomas, do you have the dimensions? If he has the dimensions.
Just grabbing it.
It is a small park, it's just a parkette, but we can look up the actual dimensions.
I have the dimension in my presentation, and I'm not looking for a foot. I just need about 1 feet or 2 feet. 1 or 2 feet will just be appropriate, not a foot. Thank you.
Through your Mayor Council, the park is approximately 0.29 acres. Would it impact use of the park? Likely not. But again, just comes staff's recommendation is not because of the cost of the fence, because of the precedents, and also it's our understanding that the resident is not looking to purchase the land, rather would just like the fence moved so that they can use that property next to their residence.
Council, do you want to take any action on this, or? No.
I guess it's a general statement. I couldn't support moving the fence further on the township property. If the house is built that close to line, it makes sense in the situation. If the resident made an application to buy that strip of land, I think that's something council could consider. Not to make sense of that, but just moving it. I couldn't support.
Ms. Priest, is a 2 foot property, side yard typical in our new subdivisions? Then?
In some of the new subdivision, yes. Not all.
Okay. I'm not seeing anyone looking to make any changes, so Mr. Media, I think the fence will stay as it is. Thank you for coming.
So you've effectively said you're not supporting affordable housing. Okay, thank you.
We have no unfinished business. We have a number of items on the consent agenda. Before we pass a motion approving and receiving the consent agenda as a whole, does anyone on council wish to remove any items for discussion? Okay, someone like to move the consent agenda then? Moved by Councillor Bryant, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're on to item 13, staff reports and memos. And our first item, I'll call on Mr. Brenneman on the community strategic plan facilitator selection. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to council. Normally, based on the amount of this particular project, it wouldn't require council approval. But obviously, since we want to bring some prominence to the strategic plan process, because council actually endorsed a plan and process by which to go forward and a timeline. Obviously, it only made sense to actually bring it forward to council for your support and approval. We had a great response in terms of the RFPs, but as you can see in the report, we are recommending that you support the hiring of Overlap. Just a little bit of history. Overlap does have a good history of completing this type of work, not only for the municipal sector, but the not-for-profit and community support agency sector as well. From my experience, from seeing some of the processes and outcomes, because again, they have done work across the region. Certainly, I think what we're getting is a innovative approach to human design, human thinking, and I think it will only hold us well in terms of supporting the work with this company on the work that we're trying to produce, considering that we're looking to produce something in a long range type of strategic plan beyond the term of council, as we've discussed, and to really project out to the future. And also, they have a great deal of experience in doing some creative work in terms of engagement with the community, designed to get the best feedback, which is, I think, something that has been very important to me, and I know this council, as part of the overall process, that we have great engagement opportunities, that we're creative in that approach. And so I'm looking very forward, hopefully, to council supporting the recommendation and us embarking on the next stage and stages of the strategic plan process. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if council has any.
Thank you. Any questions? There is a recommendation there. Would someone like to move it? Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is grants and special assistance policy update and equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging grant category. And I will call on Deputy Clerk Alex Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening to you and the rest of council. As council will remember, back in January through the budget deliberations, council approved a $6,000 budget line for grants that would support equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. As a new grant category was created through the 2022 budget, a policy updated was needed, and that is the report before you this evening. Staff recommend this evening that council approve the amended and updated grants and special assistance policy to include the new equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging category. And with that, if council have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you. Council, any questions for Ms. Smith? Council Burgess.
Through you, Mayor Shawns, Alex, there, Deputy Clerk. Just for clarity on this new grant, what does it look like going forward? Is this, if we want to increase or decrease the budget, this grant in the future, do we do that each year in the budget deliberation, or how does that budget look?
Thank you, Councillor Burgess, through you, Mayor Shawns, to Councillor Burgess. So that's correct. To increase the budget or to make any changes to this budget line, you would do that through the consecutive budget deliberations each year.
Okay. Any other Councillor Cadeau?
So just so I'm clear, there's the two streams. There's the annual grants, and then there's kind of as requested grants. So both of these streams are going to be captured within that budgetary line, correct?
No.
No. Okay.
No. Sorry, through you, Mayor Shawns, to Councillor Cadeau. The as requested grants will fall. So this grant line, the EDIB, as we like to call it now, instead of PDR. So that one will come through the specific budget line for equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Special event grants are also in our as requested. Travel assistance grants. Those are our two main categories that would fall on a as requested basis. That's captured through the miscellaneous budget line, which typically has received about $1,500 each year. Annual grants, that is a separate category on its own. And those We receive those annual grant applications. They're usually for operating or capital grants. And those are from charitable organizations. And we've opened up that application period specifically in the month of October for council's consideration during the budget as well. But those are kind of on their own per organization.
Any other questions? I'd like to move the recommendation. Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Schwint. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Structure replacement Greenhouse Road, Mr. Coupe.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. And through you, the members of council, before you is report IS 14/2023, which is for the replacement of the Greenhouse Road Bridge. We went through a competitive process. We're seeking council's endorsement for tender award to Keyswetter Excavating at a total cost of just over $1 million. Also to retain GM Blue Plan for the contract administration, construction inspection and post-construction services, and approve the purchases of land from 3 property owners in the vicinity. That'll support the construction of the bridge. Is also long-term maintenance. This is a typical process. Usually when we replace an aged structure like this on a roadway, we have a lot of 12.2 meter wide road allowance or 40-foot wide road allowance, and we require more. So when we do replace a structure, we do look to consider full build out at some point in the future, and typically look for 20 meters or 66 feet in general to support that. We're also authorizing that the mayor and clerk be able to sign the purchase and sale agreements that contain in the report, as well as sign a temporary access agreement. We did have to relocate hydro to support the bridge replacement piece. And I think that was articulated well in the report for the reasons why. I think there's a lot of good information contained in here. It's very old structure, heritage significance. It's kind of interesting there as well. And I think the other good news is we always like we're under budget in this instance. That's a good news story. We did have 11 firms. That's another competitive process as well. So, you know, that's a good news story for Woolwich. There is an in-timing water window. So work cannot start until July 1st in any year. We did engage Keyswetter Excavating. They intend to do this project in 2024. So that will be approving this now, but carrying those funds on in the 2024 budget. You can see that reflected in the upcoming budget cycle. But the advantage of that, I think, was witnessed by the amount of bidders that we received. It was a tough time. We always vie for the same in-water windows. So it's difficult when you send tenders out. People are usually in work there, so we allowed the contractors to either start this year if they were looking, or they could carry it over. And it's nice to have work sort of on the books for future. That's a good news story for contractors as well. So we did receive some good feedback from contractors on that. And with that, I think I will turn it over to see if council has any questions on this project.
Okay, any questions? No, I'm not seeing anyone. Someone like to move the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor, and that's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brian, I'll try to catch you next time. I'm looking all over. Next is Mr. Coupe again on the Jigs Hall road improvements.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Through the members of council, IS 15/2023 is before you. This is the haul route that is required by the pit owner on Jigs Hollow Road to be constructed. It's from Northfield Drive up to the pit entrance. We have worked with the owner now. It's a new landowner, still following through with the minutes of settlement. As a requirement of that, they were needing to construct a haul route that would support the amount of truck traffic that this road would take. It's currently in gravel state. So there will be an enhancement, and a significant one, I might add. A number of drainage culverts to be installed. There will be 6 drainage culverts. A lot of fill material we brought in to lift the site to make it more conducive to access Northfield Drive, as well as 150 mils of asphalt and some granular material. So it will be a considerable road, and it is designed to support that loading. This is all at the cost saving, except for $61,100 will be the township's share. That was discussed based on inflationary increases from when the minutes of settlement came to be at around 2010, 2012. And we looked and inflated that from the original 50,000 that council had endorsed, and that's contained in the agreement as well as before council this evening. So we did think that that was fair and reasonable given the updates to the road that was required and the standards that we now apply, which is considerable. So I think that was a fair and reasonable negotiations with the current owner. And outside of that, though, the pit owner is responsible for all costs, and that is reflected later on. In this, the tender was bid on by 6 firms. Again, very competitive process. I believe we were less than 2% between first and second, and third was less than 10. So there's a good news story as well. Again, competitive process. It turns out that it is Cox Construction that we're asking council to award this to. The important part is that we have received securities from the pit owner. So we were not going to bring this report before council unless we had securities in place that were satisfactory to township. I can assure council that we have those in place now, that they are acceptable. And really we are just seeking council's endorsement to award the contract. One, I guess, for the mayor and clerk to sign the haul road agreement first and foremost. Next, to award the contract to Cox Construction Limited at just under 1.2 million, and then retain Arcadis IBI Group, who was the consultant responsible for the design. And again, all fees outside of the $61,100 being funded from the pit owner. And then with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Brian.
Thank you. Through you to Jared. A couple of questions. One being Rick Asbaugh is planning to provide the gravel for this road reconstruction. So I think the minutes of settlement have stated that all berms would be up to the approved site plan notes before extraction began. But I've been told that the one along Peel Street is about 10 feet lower than it needs to be. So are we going to ensure those berms are up to the minutes of settlement requirements before the extraction begins, or how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah, you, Mayor Shaughnessy, Councillor Brian. So what we do need to have is a meeting with the pit owner regarding requirements. I'm aware that the Ministry of Natural Resources has attended the site and provided inspections. We're not privy to what those inspections contain. So it is one of those challenges we have where we have different jurisdictions responsible for different pieces of the pit. But I appreciate that's what the minutes of settlement do state, that there is some requirements on the pit itself to have certain things in place prior to extraction being permitted. We did allow contractors to engage the pit owner, and it would be under the assumption that the pit is compliant with the license for them to produce. It wasn't a requirement of the bidders to obtain gravel from the pit. I think that's a very important distinction to make. It was just something that we offered, that they could engage the pit owner. And again, the assumption would be that the pit would be compliant with the license to be able to produce material for this haul road.
Okay, and my second question, if it's okay. I think the original agreement included that the pit owner would be maintaining the newly paved road for a period of 2 years. Is that still the case?
So through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Bryant. So there is a 2-year maintenance period, which would be on the contractor. So any deficiencies on the road would be needing to be complete by the contractor if there were any deficiencies to the work.
So that's part of the agreement?
That's part, yeah, it's part of the construction contract. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Swint, seconded by Councillor Coe. All those in favor? That's here. Thank you. Breslau Community Center Library. Mr. Vander.
Thank you, Mayor
Good
Shaw.
news story.
Yes, good news story. Through you to council. So the Breslau staff have before you the Breslau Community Center Library report today for information purposes. So the region, bit of background, the region operates library services in partnership with the townships, whereas the region is responsible for the programming and then some of the maintenance and finishes within the buildings. And the township is responsible for providing the space as well as capital projects, exterior of the building, that sort of thing. 4 libraries exist within the township with a pop-up library currently in Breslau. Library services began in Breslau in the Breslau Community Center in 2011 and transitioning to the pop-up style in 2019 with some books on site, permanent book return installed shortly after as well. As a next step in progression from the pop-up library towards an eventual likely standalone facility in Breslau, staff are excited about the region moving into the lower level and renovating the space at the Breslau Community Center as a more permanent space. This enhancement comes after some public consultation that occurred over the span of a month and through a survey as well as some site visits as well too. Very good feedback from the public. Population statistics that we've included that the region has provided to compare the settlement of Breslau to some other communities, one being Baden, definitely demonstrates a need for additional services in Breslau. And then timing. So timing plan is for a recommendation to go before the library committee on August 15th. And then following a hopeful approval there, we would begin renovations immediately. Again, the region would be responsible for renovating the basement space. We do have a few minor accessibility upgrades that we're hoping to address on the entrance to the building, that sort of thing in 2024. And then planned opening February 14th of 2024. So financial implications, really not much of an impact to the township. Region will be responsible for the space, and then the region will also bear their share of utility costs, other services like pest control, that sort of thing, some of those minor things that we've worked out with them. So they're planning to carry that in their operating budget for next year. And yeah, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you to Thomas. I'm looking at your comparison of Breslau and Baden, and I'm noticing Breslau only has 122 library members. Are they only residents that have Breslau in their address, or did you include the village of Maryhill and Bloomingdale in those stats? And I only ask that because basically they're one community for, I would think, for numbers' sake.
Yeah, absolutely. To Councillor Bryant. So that would be all members at the library. So that would include those from outside of Breslau as well too. And I think that number is obviously much smaller than Baden because Baden has a standalone large facility, right? So eventually we'll get there. But this is just showing the potential that's there that we should be able to realize in Breslau.
Yeah, I think currently a lot of people are going into the KPL because of the fact there's really not a lot of information in our facilities locally, I guess, as far as the southern part of the township. So I'm really happy to see the library moving forward because I've had a number of people commenting that they really want to see a full library at the south end of the township. But thank you.
Anyone else? Someone like to move the recommendation? Actually, it's just receiving a report. Councillor Grant, Councillor Cadeau, all those in favor? That's carried. Councillor Bryant, I missed you again on the. We'll get your name on here somewhere. Okay, St. Jacob's Lions Hall lease amendment.
Again, through you, Mayor Shawns to council. So the report, second report before you this evening from RCS is with regards to the St. Jacob's Lions Hall lease amendment. And it is a request for council to authorize staff to sign the lease amendment for the Lions Hall to extend the lease by an additional 10 years and address a few minor changes throughout the agreement that's in place, through the lease agreement that's in place. The Lions Club has rented this facility from the township since 1968, located next to St. Jacob's Arena at 31 Parkside Drive. The club kind of fills a bit of a need. This isn't, I guess I could say the bread and butter, let's say, is wedding kind of fundraiser events, which is something that the township is not in the business of for a number of reasons. So they kind of fill a bit of a need there. The club historically, based on the existing agreement, the club has been responsible for maintenance of the facility as well as capital items. Capital has not been included in the existing lease, but that is something that they have done over the years, replaced the roof, installed an elevator, that sort of thing. So the lease remains fairly unchanged for the most part. A couple of the major changes are we've adjusted the insurance requirements from 2 to 5 million in liability, general liability, as well as liquor liability. So when they have liquor events, which are most of the events that they're hosting, and I know that the club has already actually made that change. And that change is in line with what the township and all the other municipalities within the region's insurance pool require for liquor events and that sort of thing. So it's in line with those requirements. And then we've adjusted to include capital works as well too, as something that the club is responsible for. And then a few other minor items, some grammar changes, that sort of thing. Both the township and the club are happy with the amendments. We visited the club and walked through these with the club. So yeah, looking forward to continue to work with them. They've been great partners, very hands-off partners. And like I said, I think they feel a need here in the community that we don't feel as a township. That, I can take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks through you, Mayor, Mr. Director, Vanderhoff. 10-year lease. Is it the first time that we're going forward with a 10-year lease, or is this kind of the standard practice? I thought that I had seen 5-year.
Yeah, so through your motions to Councillor Cadeau. So the last time around was a 5-year amendment. The club had requested a 20-year. We settled on 10 as a reasonable compromise. And I think we will be revisiting the Lions Hall lease in Elmira as well too this year, because that lease expires next year. That's a bit more complicated because we're kind of a part owner of that facility, but I know they're looking for a little bit of a longer term as well too, just to avoid us having to return to council every 5 years.
Anyone else? Someone like to move it? Councillor Burgess, second by Councillor Bryant, all those in favor?
They were all waiting to give me.
We're all waiting for you, Vaughn. Okay, thank you. Other business, we need a resolution to participate in regional all council closed session on September 15th. And that's for education and training purposes. So we do these all council meetings periodically at the Legion and invite all the area municipal councils to come and it can be training, sometimes it's just information sessions. This one is a training session. So if I could have a mover and a seconder for that, Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Cadeau, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Summer, we're just getting back into regional next week, so I don't really have a lot to report from the region. Are there any council updates? No, seeing none. Anything on the outstanding activity list? Okay, we've got third and final reading of bylaw. The following bylaw in the hands of the clerk be read a third time and finally passed. That will be numbered as bylaw number 53-2023 and signed by the mayor, clerk, and sealed with the corporate seal. And that is a provisional bylaw to adopt an engineer's report varying original assessments for maintenance of municipal drain number 11. Moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Cadeau. All those in favor, you weren't quick enough. Thank you. And we need a resolution on first, second, and third readings. First, second, third, and final. Okay, readings. The following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, third, and time and finally passed, and then they be numbered as bylaws number 54-2023 to 57-2023, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal, and you can read those in your packet. Mover and a seconder on those. Moved by Councillor Bryant, seconded by Councillor Cadeau. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our agenda. So a motion to adjourn to meet again in regular session on Tuesday, September 19th is our next regular scheduled council. We've got committee in between, and we do have some special counsel if we need it. So those in between ones, Bonnie, you look a little puzzled because we changed. No, okay. Misread your expression there. A motion that the meeting adjourns to meet again in regular session on Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, moved by Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Burgess. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, everyone. In closing, council would like to thank all who participated or tuned in to the meeting tonight. Council, please stay connected on Zoom until the live stream has stopped. And good night, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your summer.